Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we are once again back at looking at the suggestions passed to the developers of December 2019, or of course the Operation Hotwire results, which if you don't remember, Operation Hotwire was the way that the community in December was able to actually vote on the stuff that they wanted to see passed to the developers. Overall, I think it was a success, it looked really nice, and I can't wait to see it happen in the year of 2020, and also we're probably coming close to seeing what's going to be passed to developers for January. Maybe they'll give us an idea of what's going to come into the new year. But anyway, let's finish it off. This should be the last video of the series, looking at the stuff. And the first one is from Fu Manchu, and it's talking about an Airfield AA rework. Now, a lot of people, including myself, definitely find Airfield AA a little bit all over the place. It really depends on what tier you play at and how deadly it is. At top tier, the Airfield AA seems kind of useless, but at lower tiers it's incredibly aggressive, and Fu Manchu has come up with a simple idea to try and fix the issue. The idea is to try and split it into 4 separate zones around the area, which gives warnings to the people who are flying into it, and also trying to deal with the targets until you get really close. So let's go through each of the areas, and let's go through the general idea from Fu Manchu. The first thing is the area everything fine zone. So this is the majority of the map. This is where the AA just doesn't do anything, doesn't touch you, and it's, as you can see, around about 1.5 kilometers or 3 kilometers, 4. It's around about 6 kilometers away from the airfield, and nothing really happens. It's just there to basically say, yep, nothing's going to happen here. Then you have the warning zone, which is the first circle, which is around the airfield. This is around 5 to 6 kilometers radius away from the airfield, and by entering the zone, a red team pilot or an enemy pilot, they'll receive a warning. And the warning pretty much would tell you, a text or voice message to warn pilots that they're entering an airfield's AAA zone. And on top of this, there might be some kind of visual idea, so, heavy AA flak explosions around, but they won't do any physical damage, just visual damage to give people a cue on what's going on. Then you have the fire zone once you enter that, so about 3 to 4 kilometers away from the airfield. And in the fire zone, an enemy team aircraft, and just think about the airfield is allied team in this case, and then the enemy team is the red team, so the people attacking the airfield. So a red team aircraft will have the chance of being hit by heavy flak, around about 5%, with 4 shots fired per second, and not only should the chance of hit be small, but the damage inflicted should also be so. So heavy flak from the fire zone should only damage the airframe, so no component damage like pilot or engine or cooling system, nothing like that. In addition, damage to the airframe should be small enough that it takes several hits to turn any section yellow in damage. So pretty much very much a pepper zone, not going to do too much damage, but you've already had the warning, so therefore you're gonna get hit. Then you have the danger zone, which is of course around about 2.5 kilometers away from the airfield, and in the danger zone, medium AAA starts to open fire, and with a higher chance to hit than heavy flak, so around about 1% with 12 shots fired per second. The medium AAA should also be able to deal more damage and to hit components, and 1 hit should turn a component or airframe section yellow, 2 hits light orange, 5 hits black, so on and so forth. Ideally, the medium AAA should only be able to hit 1 section of a plane in such a way that an aircraft can take several hits without being rendered practically useless, as long as it's not your engine. In addition, medium AAA should also only target enemy aircraft generally headed towards the airfield. So if a red aircraft enters a danger zone and then turns away, it shouldn't take damage from the danger zone. This is incredibly complicated to make, but it does make a little bit of sense if you're worried about people attacking airfields, but there is obviously another side to this which we'll get into. So the last area that you see is of course the kill zone. Kill zone's pretty self-explanatory, 1 to 1.5 kilometers away from the airfield, and this simple thing is in the light kill zone. In the kill zone, you have light AA, then you have medium AA, and everything else to hit everybody. It's got a high chance to hit, so around about 2% with 40 shots fired per second, dealing high damage, 2 hits to black. So pretty much, if you enter the kill zone, you're dead. It's as simple as that. And then for the fastest aircraft currently available, assuming it's maintaining 1200 kilometers an hour, it would take 36 seconds to go across the warning zone, 24 for the fire zone, 15 for the danger, and 9 seconds for the kill zone. So during which time it would get hit 11 times and take about 4 black modules in damage, so it will be functionally dead. So this system would annihilate any aircraft that would go into it, is pretty much what it's talking about here. Now, this is great, apart from one problem with this, and hopefully, you've worked it out. The main problem with this is what stops people camping the airfield then. What is the factor which stops people doing it? And unfortunately, there isn't anything here that does that. And I don't know about you, but a lot of games, especially when it comes to lower tier and mid tier, end up with 1 or 2 aircraft swanning about around the airfield, and ends up with 5 or 6 aircraft trying to kill those guys. This system would make it so it would be impossible to do that. It would be impossible to kill those defenders. So that is a bit of a problem. I like the overall general idea. I think it needs a little bit of refining when it comes to adding some factors, which means that people can't just camp the area, but overall more accuracy on how AA works would definitely be nice to see. The next one is from Holly, or Hakili, depending on how you say it, and it's pretty much just talking about carriers. Everybody and their mother has talked about carriers for a very long time, and it's nice to see that there is a post about it. And basically what Holly is saying here is there needs to be a revamp of carriers in the game. At the moment, when it comes to War Thunder, all of the carriers that you can see in this picture are pre-World War II vehicles, or pre-1945, I should say. And that pretty much means that with the expansion of aircraft going into the modern era, we're into the 60s and 70s, and I'm sure we'll be into the 80s and 90s soon, and also with stuff like the Tomcat being passed to developers as well, there's a lot of outcry for larger aircraft carriers which have stuff such as catapults on them, which could launch people into the air. And I think that's generally a good idea. One of the things that I personally would like to see in War Thunder in 2020 is a more HDified section of AI when it comes to aerialistic, with all the ground vehicles and the AI vehicles, make them look a little bit better. And when it comes to stuff such as aircraft carriers, I don't see any reason to not add some more modern ones in, because of the fact that we're getting more and more modern vehicles, and landing on these small World War II aircraft carriers is not exactly easy to do. And also you have the issue of being able to take off on these aircraft carriers because of the way that the propulsion system works on them in game is not exactly, it doesn't work properly if you have more than, let's say, 2 or 3 aircraft. That's why every so often when you see people take off a carrier and then one just kind of dips into the water because they don't get the propulsion, that's an issue. So it's as simple as that. So the idea is to bring in the USS Enterprise, the Forrestal class carrier, the Audacious class from Great Britain, and also the Charles de Gaulle. And I think you could definitely share these ones across nations, and I don't really see an issue with, let's say, Japan using an American carrier or Germany using a Great Britain carrier. It just means that there is a landing platform that people can land at on these missions, and therefore be, a little bit more useful. And, it just makes overall gameplay just better, knowing that you have a more safer respawn zone that's, is less to muck up, and also just some cool little mechanics in the form of catapults. The next one is from Kodiak Ultimate, and it's talking about total plane model destructibility and disintegration. Now, obviously this is something which would be really nice to see. It's also something which is very hard to implement, and we've only seen a few games kind of implement it, like BeamNG is one of them, and also Wreckfest when it comes to cars, and even then there isn't total plane model destructibility and disintegration. But what Kodiak wants to do is separate the damage model from the visual model of the plane. So even if the damage model is hurt in a certain way, the visual model should look slightly differently depending on how much damage is taken. So the whole point is to make it so stuff like propellers, engines, wings, they fall off the plane instead of just being destroyed. So, you know, having your engine fall out would obviously be quite a catastrophic event for any pilot, but at the same time, in War Thunder, it would look really cool. What Kodiak wants to do is try and put in 3 steps, which would hopefully help the idea of total plane model destructibility and disintegration, and the first one would be to allow wings to break at the roots, rather than only breaking at the first engine or gun. This will start with the addition of a single or few breaks to show total wing loss. Examples of how much damage would be needed to get this would be direct flak hits, aircraft cannons in excess of 20mm, air rams, ground impact, bombers, multi-engine vehicles may be exempt from this first step due to engines. A total wing rip would have to be implemented in the aerodynamics, although since no plane could ever hope to recover from this much damage. I believe a simple stand in such as 4 spins and leaning towards the ripped wing during the fall should suffice. Then the next step would be engine loss. So this is where the bombers and heavy fighters will gain the ability to have total wing loss. Here the fighters will gain the ability to lose the engine cosmetically, so that in rams, explosions and crashes, all planes would be 1 step closer to total destructibility. Bombers should also be capable of losing noses, as the B-17 was famous for showing the devastating effect of head-on attacks, although the only effect from now would be heavily increased drag. The third step wouldn't be the last, but would be a good point to say the mechanic is fleshed out enough to implement in live servers. Here the cockpit would be fully disintegrate, where the player vehicle is reduced game-wise to nothing but particle effects. This is also the step where in-depth additions to the flight models would be made to allow realistic crash paths for each damaged state, a feat already accomplished with the current state of the damage model. So you can see he wants a lot of additions to how the damage model looks visually and also how it works, and it would be really nice to see this. The only issue is you have engine limitations, you have PC limitations, and then you have other limitations as well, such as this would take a hell of a long time, and would it be something that would benefit the game, or is it one of those things like you know, engine flames or the sparks, which is really nice to see and, you know, really awesome to uphold, but something that people would forget about after a week when it is added. So yeah, it's just one of those things where it would be really nice to see this. The only question is, will we get it? And I think the overall idea is probably no, just because of the issues that it encompasses. The next one is from Man, and it's talking about the method to improve the communication between Gaijin and the player base via polls. And what is kind of funny about this is like a meta post inside of a post, because Man actually pretty much describes the way that Operation Hotwire works, but he takes it and pretty much just expands it to everything. So his general idea is to create a thread on the forums or wherever of suggestions, and people put their suggestions in. Then those suggestions are taken, they're put into a poll setting, and then members of the community can vote on those polls and vote which ones they want, to put towards the developers. So very much similar to how Operation Hotwire worked, which is why I say it's meta. And it's as simple as that. So generally, polls are the easiest way of communicating between a large company and individuals, because it's not always easy going through like thousands upon thousands of comments or letters and stuff like that. Sometimes it's nice to just see some percentages, and then you can try and work off of that and look at the comments of those percentages. But yeah, it's as simple as that. You create a suggestion post, people put in their suggestions, then the suggestions are gathered up by the forum moderators, they're put into one single post as polls, and then people vote on which issues they want pushed towards the general, the developers. Simple as that. It would work wonderfully. The next one is Matizo14, and Matizo14 is asking for a very simple thing, and it's support for Blender 2.8. Now, this is a problem that I've personally run into with, Gaijin software, and also other things as well, when it comes to having to use outdated products instead of updating them. I've had issues in the past with video editors and stuff like that for the same reason. So Blender 2.8 was recently appeared, and this was in August 29, 2019, so we're talking about half a year ago at this point, and the version, according to Matizo, is a huge jump and a completely different program, and it's really friendly for beginners, and also is good for professionals, and also it's free. It's the main tool that a lot of people use to build models and stuff, and I think more people should get into it just because it's a really cool system. And you can build stuff and put it into user missions and get them in the game and have a bit of fun with this. Now, War Thunder CDK has a plugin for Blender, which is great, but the plugin only works for a version from 5 years ago, and therefore if you export the version 2.8 to the ancient version, this doesn't work or creates crazy errors. Exporting through 3ds Max is also not simple and takes a long time. So the idea is to make a plugin for the newer version of Blender instead of just keeping the old version of Blender. I think we can all agree with this. More what would be the word? More user-created content is always good when it comes to the game, and this would be a way to make it easier for people in order to create that. So for me, I definitely agree with what Matizo says. The next one is from Yarka, or Jaka, and Yarka is a simple request as well. It's just increasing the file size limit of custom missions from 512 to 2048 kilobytes. And the reason to do this for him and his community, because if you don't know who Yarka is actually, he is an individual along with a bunch of others who create custom battles. I believe they actually have one running this weekend, or it may have already run. But yeah, they create these custom games, and they put their own individual spin on them, and you get to go and play them in either historic ways or just, kind of fun ways. So it's nice to see parts of that community represented a lot, and I'm very happy to see, it's being pushed onto the developers here, because pretty much if you're limited to a file size of 512 compared to 2048, that just means that you're going to be able to do less in the game mode itself. You're not going to be as creative because you are limited by space, and it would be nice if that limit was increased, so therefore, you are able to just make more. You are able to make more stuff going on in maps. And as a person who is a big advocate for user missions, for custom battles, and also for user-made maps and all of this stuff, I think increasing the limit is definitely the way to go, because it just makes everything so much easier for individuals if they don't have to deal with such a small limit. The next one is from KV Laser 22, and it's a simple one. Once again, there's a lot of simple ones here, but they're really nice and little minor things which would improve the game a lot. So what Laser wants is the way that World War II turrets, or bomber turrets I should say, worked in World War II is obviously you didn't have this magical third-person view. So therefore what you had to do is you had to look around the skies, and you had to pretty much move your turret around so you were able to kind of shimmy through the skies and be able to look for targets. So the problem in War Thunder is unless you're being engaged from an enemy at a certain distance and your AI gunners have decided to wake up, your gunners are lifeless. They don't move. They don't actually do anything. So what Laser wants to do is just every so often just get the gunners to move around, make it look like they are actually alive instead of robots which only turn on when a plane gets around 2 kilometers away. This would be a nice little simple change. change, and it would just mean little rotations of guns every so often to have a look around, maybe up and down on the guns as well, and then when a target gets close, then they start tracking it, but it just makes the game feel a little bit more alive, a little bit more immersive, and for me, a little bit better. The next one is from OK Boomer, and once again, another great suggestion, and this is introducing old April Fool's events in the custom battles, and he lists the April Fool's events. Obviously we have Pony, Godzilla, the big old snail, we had then the Walkers, which are the chicken walkers, the Golden Hind, I don't even remember that one, Rank 9 of course, and then Silent Thunder, and then obviously 2019 we had the spaceships and stuff like that. So the main thing is obviously we don't have access to these events. There was supposed to be a few custom missions where you could play these things, but I haven't been able to find them. And I know some of the models are still in the files, like the chicken walkers are still there, but I don't know if stuff like the pony is still there and things like that. And it would be nice if we as a community could have access to these files, along with some others. Tank football is one of those ones which would be really nice to see. And tank football in general was a really fun game mode. I really enjoyed it, and it was brought back a little bit, but I feel like, at least from the tech hub point of view, it would be really nice to have it back so we could create some tournaments around it and have a bit of fun, because, you know, it's just one of those game modes that's really fun with the boosted models. And Boomer has two ways of introducing these ideas. So the first one is just to reintroduce them with the current system, the latest gameplay system. So you would have improved flight model and damage model of the vehicles, you know, so just basically make them slightly better, especially when you compare it to Rank 9 and stuff like that. And then, or you could just reintroduce them without any change. I personally would just reintroduce them without any change, just stick them in. And then if they want to improve them later on, you know, they can do. But if it's easier just to stick them in, just stick them in. Because I would love to play them again, and I feel like other community members should also be able to play them. I feel like Golden Hind may have been ships. There was definitely ships somewhere along the way, like the old Rad Scallions and stuff like that. And now the last suggestion, this is from Fernan. And what Fernan is wanting here is the return of old removed aircraft through war bonds. So if you didn't know, in War Thunder's history, a bunch of planes got taken out. There's actually a few more that have been taken out since this point. This post was made in 2017. So the fact is the OS2Us are back, which are listed, but then other stuff such as the mouse has been taken out, you know, the Panther 2 and also the Tiger 2 105 and stuff like that. And there is a bunch of old vehicles, a lot of Soviet and German vehicles that were removed. The Italian-German vehicles, they were gone. All of the Sparvieros, the SMs, there is still one of the SMs that the SBs that I don't have. I would love to have, and also the TATs. I don't have any of the TATs. But the general idea is to make it able to collect these vehicles through war bonds. So these vehicles are not special at all. You know, a lot of them don't even really matter to the game. They are unremarkable, apart from maybe the Key 10-2C and maybe a few of the other ones, but the majority don't really mean anything. So why not, on top of the 5 premiums that you have, why not also have one of the aircraft which would be available for war bonds instead of, you know, so you could have a choice. You could either get a cool old rare vehicle, which, you know, doesn't have premium, it doesn't have any bonuses on it, it's just, you know, one of the rare old vehicles that used to be in the tech tree, or you could get yourself a premium. So it would just be a way for people like me, and I'm sure Fernan as well, to be able to get their hands on vehicles that, to be honest, I've wanted for a long time. You know, I'd love to have the Year 2 Tats, even though they were taken out of the game ages ago. There's some of those vehicles that I've never been able to have, so adding them back in some form of warbond system or some form of blueprint system, I would personally really like to see. So I do agree with this idea overall. there is a lot of good ideas here. There is a lot of nice stuff which was passed to developers in December. And as I said before, I hope that, we have one of these in 2020 as well, just to see what ideas the general forum community is looking at. On top of this as well, the next week or so, we'll probably be focusing on the other passed to developers stuff, and also some videos looking at secondary tech trees and things like that. So enjoy that. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Ambrosius McClellan, B. Young, Blackie, Chris Giltname, Daniel Stanton, Jay Wilt, John Ryman, Martinez, Moxie, Super Cacti, Trigger Hippie, Eugene's Terry, and also Elove Goat and Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.